Last week we we began to study the explanation as to why Hanukkah contains such great and important focus. Why is it number 8? And he began by talking about the concept of oil. Oil, in its physical tendency, always rises to the top. And as much as you try to mix it, eventually the oil will just not refuse to mix with anything, and it goes up to the top. Similarly, the concept of oil is used in Kabbalistic and Hasidic terms to describe the level of chokhmah, wisdom, and separateness. Wisdom is something that's within a person that is really on the top. It's like the cream rising to the top, the oil rising to the top. It's the deepest and most intense and most important part of a person's makeup. That is where everyone gets there. Whoever does a smart thing in this world is from the wisdom, which is accumulated intelligence, and it's also based on experience. You know, a person who is wise, a person is able to think, a person is able to use stored intelligence and information. That's what makes a person wise, because of the wisdom. So wisdom is the highest spot. And you can't define wisdom. You can't touch it. You can't see it. It's an intangible. And it's always on the top because it's undefinable, really. And it only spends a second with you. When you want to get into your reservoirs, you think, you have an issue, you have a problem, and then all of a sudden you say, "Oh, I got it." That's the flash of wisdom. After that, it's a different level called understanding. It's taking that wisdom and developing it and understanding it. Understanding is it works in a whole different way than wisdom does. And it's the same thing with the word Kodesh, which we discussed last week. Kodesh means holy. Holy, the word holy, by definition, means it's separate from other things. Other things may not be holy, and this is holy. Because if you're going to define something as holy, that means something around it is not holy. Because if everything around it was holy, then it wouldn't be holy, it would just be normal. So when you say holy, you mean something that's separate. Like Shabbos is called Shabbos Kodesh, the holy Shabbos. Why is it the holy Shabbos? Because Shabbos is a separate entity, separate from the rest of the week. It doesn't work the same way. Oh, wait a minute, the sun shines in the same way, the squirrels run around looking for food in the same way, and the traffic now is unending on the same, everything seems to be running well. That's true. You can only experience the Kodesh of Shabbos when you yourself have become Kodesh, when you separate yourself from what the rest of the world, and all of a sudden you feel it. You know it. You've gotten it. That's why God says don't do any of this. So remove the outer elements of distraction, and then you'll find that Kodesh. You'll be able to experience the beauty of Shabbos, the holiness of Shabbos, the remoteness, an island in time, where the rest of the world, that's just not relevant. It's not there. That's what Kodesh means, holiness. That's what oil represents. Oil represents something that rises to the top, and it maintains its separateness. Okay. Page 35. This is why the mitzvah of the Hanukkah lamp is performed specifically from when the sun sets, since the function of the Hanukkah lamps is to illuminate the darkness. In other words, we tap into a much deeper and higher level, this level of Kodesh, this level of Chokhmah, this level of oil, to illuminate a very powerful darkness. This is also why the lamps of the Hanukkah are precisely 8, as well as the fact that the days of Hanukkah are 8, which is what the Talmud says. They are 8 days. Because the number 8 signifies, as noted above, chapter 1, the level that is beyond Hishtalshalut. The word Hishtalshalut, as a reminder, means a chain, like a chain reaction. When there's a chain, link number 1 and link number 1,000,000 are all connected to one another. And if you don't have link 1, you can't have link million. And if you don't have link 50, you can't have link million or link 1, because the whole chain falls apart. So each link in a chain is dependent and follows the previous link. Is caused by the previous. When you have a long chain, so you can climb up something, or you can tie up something, or the boat can now be moored at the port over there. So you have this long chain or wire or rope. The chain is only effective if you have one through the end of it. If one link decides that it's too tired today and doesn't want to go to work, then the whole chain falls apart. So each one is affected by the other one. It's the cause and effect story. The cause is caused by the effect. I'm sorry, the other way around. The cause causes the effect. So if I put together certain ingredients, I have an effect. It's called cholent. And if I put other ingredients, it's kugel. But if I miss a couple of things out, I may mix up between the cholent and the kugel, and then I have a mess. I don't have, I have experiments, but I might not have a good chain. I might not have a good cause and effect. That's the way normal things work. When you start something and you hope to achieve, at the end result you hope will be as a result of the causes that made the effect happen. But when you have something that is beyond the chain, that means there is no real cause and effect that you could identify. It's like we discussed in the previous discourse about something being created from nothing. We're coming to the point where we finish the Torah, which will be at Simchas Torah, just 2 weeks away from us. And we have a great celebration over here. It's all fun and it's enjoyable and good food and good cheer and good demeanor. What you can't accomplish with crying and seriousness on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, you can end up doing with your dancing and with your enjoyment and indulgence on Simchas Torah. What's the celebration? Celebration is, people will tell you, well, because we finished the Torah. But that's not the entire celebration. That's true, we do finish the Torah. But there's something else we do on Simchas Torah as well. We restart the Torah on that very day. The restarting the Torah is an integral part of the celebration, because that means that the Torah's chain is not going to end. It just continues on, and we will never say, okay, now we're done. What else is there? There is nothing else. We start again, and we find new life and new messages, because it's infinite. It's coming from God. So, the first word of the Torah is in the beginning, and then the second word is bara, created, Elohim. In the beginning, God created. Or when God created in the beginning, He created heaven and earth. Either way, that word bara, that word creation, can only be used in its real definition about something that wasn't here before, and He created it from nothing. I didn't create this tea. I took a tea bag and I took water, which was pre-existing, and I mixed them together. So I didn't create the tea, if you want to be semantic. I didn't quite create it. I reformed it from being some dry leaves and some nondescript water. Now that I put it together, I have made something, but I haven't really created, because the ingredients were with me before. What you can create is words of wisdom. You can create smart things, but those are intangibles. You create something, but that's also not really from nothing. It's based on tools that we have. Not everybody can create wisdom. And some people who can create wisdom can't paint. That's also a form of wisdom. So we all have the same tool, we have the same brain, but it's the chemicals that are in the brain, that which makes the brain run, are different in every person, which shows that the ingredients are individual within the person. Creating something means that something wasn't here before. I've said this story about 500 times, a silly story about the scientists who had this debate with God, and the scientists have decided that they've come to a point where they can create as well. And there's this big debate. God is very happy to debate with them. And God says, you go first. You are more than me. And so they come forward. They're going to create a person. They pick up the earth with the intention to create whatever it is they're going to create. God says, excuse me, that's my earth. Create your own earth. If you want to create something, that's created from nothing. If you want to form or fashion or redo this or that's all fine. But if you want to create, you got to create something from nothing. That's what the term, the word implies. Something from nothing. Now, it's not nothing. There is obviously something that's creating it. If not, then it wouldn't be created. But we define it as nothing, as we discussed in the previous studies that we had. We define it as nothing because we can't define it. Something that creates has to be undefinable because it's greater than any creation that we have. That's why it's able to create. So we use the term nothing. It's something from nothing because to us it's not definable. That's what creation means. That's what it means above Gestaltung. We subvert the need to go through the chain and cause and effect when we have something which is transcendent, from a higher level, from a greater level, not the regular chain. The regular chain of godly energy creates the world, creates people, creates animals, bugs, fish, birds, creates the vegetation, creates everything in its way. The above the normal is that we have. That chain reaction everybody has, a cause and effect. That's why we're here. The question is, what else is there for us? That's the stuff that is above the chain. We want to transcend, and we get the deeper elements of God that don't have a cause and effect necessarily, but are higher. There's something from nothing level. That's what we're looking for.
I got a question for you. But you keep on saying wisdom. Why does King Solomon always put wisdom under a female gender in Proverbs?
Because the word wisdom in Hebrew ends with a hey. A ha.
Yeah.
And any word that ends with a hey, more or less, is a female word, even if it might not mean female. And if it doesn't, then it's a masculine word. This is just grammar, a grammar level. And it is discussed in books of grammar regarding parts of a human being, and the decision is that parts of a human being, generally speaking, are all feminine. So the hand, she moves. So anybody who worries about paying too much attention to masculine, just tell them that there's a lot of words that are like wisdom and understanding that are both feminine words.
Yeah, it just said, like he says, like, by her, do not let her go, hold on to
yes, her. And the word kindness, for example, is a masculine word. Chesed. Chesed, because it doesn't end with one of those female letters. So you won't say chasadot, which would be for a female plural, but you would say chasadim. The im is a masculine ending to plural. All right. Back in the text over here, this is also why the lamps of Hanukkah are precisely 8. I'm just doing this chapter, this is a paragraph again, as well as the fact that the days of Hanukkah are 8, because the number 8 signifies, as noted above, chapter 1, the level that is beyond Hishtalshel, beyond that chain. And it is due to this very level that one is able to illuminate even the darkness. Just look at number 50 before we turn the page. Footnote number 50 in the brackets. As explained above, it is only a revelation of God's infinite light. That means a godly light that is completely beyond Hishtalshelut, that infinite level alluded to by number 8, that can transform utter spiritual darkness into light, which will be discussed at greater length as we continue over here. So the bottom line is that the number 8 of Hanukkah, and the question was, why is Hanukkah specifically 8 days, and why don't we follow the temple, which is 7, is because the focus of Hanukkah is to get to a place that's beyond the norm. Why is that? Because it had to combat darkness, which is why the Greeks fought against the oil They defiled the oil because the oil represents that which is transcendent. It's always separate and it's always above. It always sits on top. So the Greeks were defiling the oils that were in the temple specifically. And so now we know why and why it starts at night, whereas the lights of the temple had to be lit before night in the afternoon, but Hanukkah has to be lit after sunset because its focus is dealing with darkness, which is why oil and why 8 and so on.
Question. How is it over the years we've gotten to the point of lighting candles instead of using oil?
Let me repeat the question. How is it that over the years we've gotten to light candles rather than oil? There is a discussion in the Talmud, in the volume of Shabbos. There is no tractate, there is no volume for Hanukkah. There is a volume for everything else, for Rosh Hashanah, for Purim, for Sukkot. There is nothing for Hanukkah. Hanukkah has a shorter presentation in the Talmud. It's just a couple of pages. It happened, by the way, just right before the Talmudic era anyway. So some of the people there were able to talk to those who were present at that moment. And I must add that Hanukkah is not that of a significant holiday. In fact, it's probably, of all the holidays that we have, not the minor holidays, all of the major holidays, Passover, Shavuos, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, it's the most minor of all. There's no biblical reference to Hanukkah at all. It happened after the end of biblical times. Purim, there's a book of Esther, that's part of the Bible. It's biblical. Hanukkah has no biblical reference. And it was not celebrated in the regular way. There was no meal for Hanukkah. That's very un-Jewish. We always have meals, we always have food. Hanukkah, we have finger food and snacks.
Well, latkes. I mean,
And latkes are very important. And probably more important than, but, when you sit down to brisket and challah and honey and matzah, it's a little different. Listen, I enjoy latkes and donuts as much as anybody. And chocolates and all
What's
that.
up here?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're too oily, you light them. Like in candles.
You're too oily? Put some more oil in it.
Exactly.
So there is a discussion in Talmud regarding Hanukkah. And the question, the whole thing of Hanukkah, of course, is lighting the menorah. Nothing else of Hanukkah. It has whatever else we do is all just, to enhance it. But it's the requirement of Hanukkah is simply to light a menorah. It's the most simple, easiest holiday. Just take some oil or take some candles and light them. It's not a very difficult thing to do.
Well, they didn't have candles back then.
Oh yes, they did.
They did?
They sure did. They had all kinds of oils and all kinds of concoctions.
I thought
And
candles was created during the medieval.
candles are created from taking oil.
Oh.
You can make it from wax. You make it from fat.
Paraffin.
Paraffin. There's a lot of The Talmud talks about all of these things.
And beeswax too.
Beeswax, exactly. And the discussion is what is permissible, what is acceptable for Hanukkah, and the solution is it should be olive oil, because olive oil was the miracle of the olive oil. That's the best way to celebrate Hanukkah. And you'll see the menorahs that are in this house. If you go to our collection, they are olive oil menorahs, or oil menorahs. And when we light the menorah here, we will light it with olive oil exclusively. We also use a candle specifically, deliberately, for the shamash. That's the kindler, the lighter of beeswax. We actually use beeswax for that. Beeswax is the best. First of all, it smells out of this world. Not when it lights, just when you hold it, when you handle it. But there are 3 times in the year when of the 7 candle lighting opportunities in the year, 3 of them are beeswax that we use for the shamash on Hanukkah, for searching of the chametz on Passover we use beeswax. It's a very powerful, brighter light. And also for a yard site, we prefer to use beeswax. And
Where would I buy a beeswax yard side candle?
oh, in New York.
Okay, no.
And what about,
Same
the,
question.
I'll be in New York in a few weeks. So. As Susan says, I need to give you an order.
yeah, right.
What is the
Some friends that
significance?
my cousin could sing.
Wait, you finish answering her.
The significance of?
No, can you finish the oil question?
I'll get to it in a second. What's the significance
Well, I don't
of?
want to take you long.
Significance of?
Jelly donuts.
Oh, that's just because they're fried in oil.
It's
Oh,
not the jelly and it's not the donut.
That's Israeli.
The Jews from Eastern Europe had latkes because they only had potatoes the whole year. And so potato flour, potato pudding, potato kugel, potato this, potato that, potato latkes. The Jews from the Sephardic Jews were heavily into flour. They make all kinds of floury baklava, everything is made from flour. And so they introduced donuts. They fried flour when the Jews of Europe fried potatoes. Today we get the best of both worlds. Start with latkes, we do applesauce and sour cream, and finish it off with donuts and chocolate. That's an American thing. Hanukkah gelt, make it into chocolate. Now it's called gelt. All right. So the concept of candles is permissible, but the best and the kids usually light candles. It's much more difficult for them to light oil, and candles are taller and make a noise and make a mess. That's kids like that. So our younger kids will light candles, but today all of our boys, only the boys light the Hanukkah candles in this house. That's a custom of Chabad, and only the girls light the Shabbos candles. Of course, they do it every single week, and we get to do it 8 days in the year. That's the compromise between the boys and the girls. Anyway, but the candles are allowed, and it's permissible, and it's okay. But the significance of the candles is to remind you of the temple times, and the temple menorah was an oil menorah, and the menorahs in many of the homes are olive oil menorahs because that's the way we commemorate the miracle fest. Candles are easier to make, easier to buy, they're cheaper.
How long should they burn?
They should burn from the time you light them, which should be right after sunset, until a half hour into night.
So for a half an hour.
So an extra half hour after. Now sunset's not night. Nightfall in this part of the world is about 35 minutes after the sun sets. Put it this way. No, I will not put it this way. In order for me to use the example I was about to use, I would have to get into too long of a discussion about times and the calendar, and that's no good. But bottom line is that when the sun sets, the next day begins for all intents and purposes. But the day doesn't end. For example, Shabbos. You light the candles 18 minutes before sunset. That gives you a buffer to get into Shabbos. You're not allowed to light any fire on Shabbos. Lighting Shabbos candles after sunset is like celebrating the Passover Seder with the Challah. You can't celebrate. You can say, you don't tell me how to celebrate my meal. Well, okay, but if you want to follow what Torah says, what Judaism says about celebration, well, tonight we don't do challah because the Torah says no challah, can't even possess challah, but you do matzah. You can do whatever you want. I'm not going to stop you, but you know what I mean. It's the same thing with lighting Shabbos candles and not in the right time. That if you look at the Good Shabbos emails, the candle lightings are there every single week for Peachtree City. So people should know, people should be aware. And the time is that time. If you miss that time, don't light candles anymore. You can't honor Shabbos by violating it. So it's just, you have to wait the next week. And that's okay, because every single blessed week we're lighting candles, even if it's Yom Kippur, no matter what. So the time for lighting candles is 18 minutes before sunset. But Shabbos doesn't end at sunset. The next day, Saturday, it ends at nightfall, not at sunset. In fact, Shabbos ends 7 minutes after the nightfall. So the fast on Sunday, and I can't get into that now, but the fast on Sunday, for example, ended here at 8:20. And yesterday's fast ended at 8:24. Because we are earlier the times are getting earlier, but we still had to extra time because it's a biblical day. A biblical day, it lasts a few minutes after nightfall, for whatever reason. We're getting into that now. But the bottom line is that this day of Shabbos ends up being about 25 hours. And the reason for this is because there is a debate as to what exactly constitutes the end of a day. Is it sunset or is it nightfall? So we are stringent when it comes to beginning of the day. We begin it at sunset. When it comes to ending the day, we end it at nightfall. So Shabbos is about 25 hours, as was the fast. The fast of Yom Kippur is supposed to be 26 hours, which is the gematria. It's the equivalent of God's ineffable name. But the 26th hour can be even 1 minute into it, and then it's considered as if you got the whole hour. So we started prayers on Kol Nidre at 7:45, and most of the people were there before 7:45, and we didn't finish it until 8:25, and then by the time we broke the fast, it was more than 25 hours.
Can't we go like the olden days when we see 3 stars in the sky? That's dark, isn't it?
3 stars is not the olden days. 3 stars is a definition given regarding a time. It doesn't say 3 stars, by the way. It says 3 medium-sized stars. Now, what's a medium-sized star?
I don't know, the big ones.
So because the big ones, are you looking at big ones or are you looking at medium ones? You don't know what you're looking at.
No.
It was just, that was given to us.
The earth, the sun is a medium.
But the
It's an
sun
average
goes
size
down. At nightfall, there's no sun.
Yeah.
So you can't look at the sun. So the halacha says when 3 medium stars come out, then you know it's Shabbos is over. But what's 3 medium stars? It was just a time. It's a time as to when are these stars visible at a certain time after the sun sets. You can start seeing the medium-sized stars. It's just a time. It's not. It's a time. It's giving you a sign of when that time is. It's not the stars. It doesn't depend on the stars. It depends on the time, and it depends where you are in the world. There are some places in the world where it takes an hour. I grew up in London, and in London the sun sets, and it takes 1 hour or more for the night to fall. And so there's different places. Too foggy.
Yeah. Depends when. Not always foggy.
Oh, London?
That has nothing to do with it.
We're just kidding. Yeah.
Do you know that on the calendar from Chabad in town,
Yeah.
it was last night 8:23 and we're 8:24
We're always-
because we're west.
We're always a little later. And in the winter, it's even more pronounced, which is
Is it?
amazing. Yeah, it's like 3 minutes difference.
Wow.
What if you live like in one of the poles?
Oh, I have a friend who is the Chabad rabbi in Anchorage. And in Anchorage, there is no night until who knows when. So Havdalah, Shabbos goes out before they, Shabbos goes out after they go to sleep on Saturday night. They make Havdalah on Sunday morning. So, Shabbos doesn't go out till 2 in the morning. Well, I have a day tomorrow. So you get up on Sunday morning at 8 o'clock, okay, Havdalah!
It's amazing.
Yeah, they stay up to pray the evening services, but for the kids, you would never have Havdalah for 3 or 4 months in the year. And then on the flip side, Shabbos in the winter is coming in about 1:45. You have lunch for your Friday night meal.
Well, you save on food there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, extreme pull. And what about somebody who's going into space? And where the time changes the day changes every couple of hours or so. You have to keep on davening and saying,
There is a video of a Jewish astronaut in space trying to spin a dreidel
Oh my.
in the air.
Did he do it?
Yeah, he didn't like the actual candle, but he kind of made believe it was the candle.
Wow.
Shame he never made it back then.
That's Ilan Ramon.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, that is really. And we lost the other Jewish woman in the challenge.
The woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
What's her name? Krista or something?
No, she was the teacher.
Teacher.
Yeah, my fellow.
I
College.
don't remember.
All right. I remember that when Reagan spoke
Yeah.
2 days later. Whoa, was that a speech? Whew. All right. 1986. Okay. Page 36, chapter 3. The explanation of the matter. You got it? Okay. The explanation of the matter as it pertains to the service of man. Let's see number 51 before we move. Footnote number 51. The mystical explanation given in the previous chapter, that the miracle of Hanukkah signifies the triumph of godly light over spiritual darkness, also has a very practical meaning, as the discourse will now explain. The Rebbe of blessed memory, this Rebbe, who was the author of this discourse, was extremely explaining a lot in the mystical terms, just like all of his predecessors were. But he differed from the other ones by never ending in, and that's how it is in the heavenly sphere. He always ended up by saying, okay, so what does it mean to us? What message? I get it that Hanukkah is about combating darkness, but what do I do now? What can I take from this? How do I fight the darkness? What should I do? Play some more dreidel? How do I deal with this? And not just on Hanukkah. But Hanukkah, like all the other Jewish holidays, is a time to store energy for the rest of the year. You only have it once a year. You only have it once a year means that there's enough in there to pack your bag for till next year. So what is the meaning that I take from 8 nights of Hanukkah that I continue to just love? It seems seemingly a very historical significant thing, but nothing significant personally. Okay, I'm lighting a menorah. Okay, tomorrow I light food. Oh, how nice. 8 candles, looks nice. But what does it mean? What do we take from this? How do we apply this practically? So, back to the text. The explanation of the matter is, as it pertains to the service of man, can be understood by introducing the ideas explained in the discourse of my father-in-law, the Rebbe. His predecessor was the 6th Rebbe of Chabad. His name was Yosef Yitzchak. He was born in Lubavitch, in the town of Lubavitch. His father was there. He was the only child to his father, who was the 5th Rebbe at that time. He got involved in communal activities at the ripe old age of 15, married at 17, and then was faced with challenges that activists of 20, 30, 40 years hadn't faced. He was dealing with communism, he was dealing with pogroms and all kinds of things, and this young man was sent to Moscow and to Petersburg all the time to deal with these issues. And there's incredible stories about him. His father moved out of Lubavitch in 1916 or 15 because of World War I. It was around Belarus, around there, and they moved to a city called Rostov on the Dan River. And his father passed away in 1920 at a pretty young age, and he took over then, and that was the beginning of communism. And communism began with the Bolsheviks, the Jewish people who knew all about Judaism. Many of them came from the Hasidic backgrounds of this very Hasidic movement of Chabad, and they turned against Chabad in a terrible way. Thousands of Chabadniks were arrested and just shot through the head, down in the gulags, or sent to Siberia. I was around Hasidim who spent 7, 8, 10, 15, 20 years in Siberia. There was a certain Chassid by the name of Rabbi Eliezer Nanas, who lived in Jerusalem. When I studied in Jerusalem, his apartment was 5 minutes away. We used to go knock on his door every once in a while and sit with him and hear his stories. Just unbelievable. So I grew up around these people. And the Rebbe himself was arrested in 1927 and sentenced to death by firing squad. There was an unbelievable turmoil around the world. Latvia specifically put a lot of pressure, as did the United States. And eventually his sentence was commuted to 10 years of exile. then 3 years of exile, and he went out to exile, and 10 days later he was back. But the conditions were so difficult for him that he had to leave. They were so happy to kick him out, to close the door behind him. Russia, the communists were very happy. So in 1927, he left Russia, moved to Latvia, to Riga, and then eventually he moved, from Riga he came to the United States in 1929. The first Hasidic Rebbe to ever come, and in those days, in 1929, there was no kosher food, there was no OU on any of the things, it was a very dry land. Imagine going to New York and not having any Jewish books, and it was all in Poland. New York was a place where you came to give up your Judaism. And he stayed in the United States for a year and a half. There was a strong thought of him perhaps moving here, but he ended up choosing not to, going back to Riga, and eventually moved to Poland. He moved to Warsaw in 1932, I think, and in 1934 or 5 moved to a suburb of Warsaw called Otwock, where it's more of a summer type of place, because because of what they did to him, the communists did to him, threw him downstairs, beat him. He was a very strong physical man, and he broke him. He ended up contracting MS, and he was weakened by this whole ordeal. He didn't stop. He fought like a lion for Judaism, and he eventually established Judaism in America. New York became New York because he moved in 1940, right as the war. He was there when Warsaw was getting bombed. He writes. He's a prolific writer. He describes every moment of the bombs that fell on Rosh Hashanah. On Rosh Hashanah, thousands of Jews were murdered in Warsaw. That's when the Nazis targeted the concentration of where the Jews were. Knowing everybody had been in synagogues, in their homes. Anyway, he moved to the United States in end of February, early March 1940, and established Chabad here, the headquarters of Chabad here, turned New York into what New York is today. And together with others, he wasn't the only one. And then said that the rest of the United States should also be like New York. And that's when he started a vast network of emissaries, all run by his son-in-law, the Rebbe. Because he came in 1941 from France via Italy and Portugal, and then flew to the United States. And when he came, that's when they started this outreach network of Chabad. So the father-in-law said to the son-in-law, "That's going to be your mission to begin this outreach to the rest of the United States." And so this Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, I'm named after this Rebbe, Yosef Yitzchak, the sixth Rebbe of Chabad. And so the Rebbe is quoting some of his work and then going to expand upon it about this Hanukkah. So he says like this, second paragraph. The Greeks defiled the sanctuary oils because their entire war was a spiritual one. They did not wish to harm the bodies of Israel. That means it wasn't the physical, like Purim, where there was annihilation, was a threat. Their primary desire was to cause them, or Israel, to forget your Torah and take them away from the statutes of your will. 54. This quote, to forget your Torah and the statutes of your will, is from the Va'al Hanissim liturgy recited on Hanukkah. We recite this in the prayers, we recite this in the benching after bread. Ancient Greek culture was driven by a very secularistic and hedonistic philosophy, one that celebrated and reveled in the human mind and body, not something spiritual. The Greeks opposed spirituality and divinity, the belief that lay at the very foundation of Judaism's doctrine, and therefore waged a war aiming to eradicate Torah and mitzvot. The specifics of this war will now be discussed. So we think usually of wars that they're trying to destroy the Jews. And this was what happened. Passover time celebrates the fact that the Egyptians, who weren't trying to destroy the Jews, but they did a good job in destroying many of us. And Purim was Haman said, okay, it's time to get rid of the Jews. Hanukkah wasn't getting rid of the Jews at all. They wanted to get rid of Judaism in its spirituality, in its rituals, not its culture. Jewish culture, what they call today Israeli dancing, falafel making, singing, saying Israeli slogans, sababa, or whatever words that they have, is as relevant as the Greeks were. It has no real relevance. It's eating gefilte fish and kugel on Shabbos is delicious. You can even say it's a good custom, but it's not Yiddishkeit. Judaism is about praying, and it's about studying, and it's about, more importantly, performing, doing what God wants us to do, as the discussion was on Friday night, on Kol Nidre. That was the concept of that sermon. Yeah, we can be a mensch, and we can do tikkun olam, but the rest of the world also needs to be a mensch. We don't have a hold on being a mensch. We don't have a hold on caring about the world. That's everyone's mission. Our thing is different than the rest of the world. That's why we are considered a light unto the nations, because a light means that we have an energy that everybody else can benefit from. That if they had that energy, then we wouldn't have to be a light to the nations. The Jewish people were chosen to be a light unto the nations. That means to be Jewish, Yiddishkeit. The Greek philosophy, though, doesn't tolerate that. The Greek philosophy says, we like the kugel. We love that, the kishka and the cholent and gefilte fish and latkes and gribenes and whatever else you appreciate. That's great. Continue to enjoy that. But what's with that tefillin? You're wrapping boxes on your arm? Are you crazy? What kind of business is that? The sugar. You wouldn't believe in that stuff? Or you come and call, can we get a fast a whole day? What's that all about? You on a diet? No, we're doing it because God. Oh, who? Say that again. God wants you to do it. That's what they had a problem. You're not going to drive a car because it's Shabbos. You're not going to eat ham because some God says something written in the Torah about it? What? That's ridiculous. That's all belief systems that are opposed to how human beings. If it tastes good, take it, enjoy it. If it feels good, do it. That's the Olympics, by the way. The Olympics were based on the human mind, the human body, and the human spirit. It's celebrating the human. Today it was revived after whatever it is, and it becomes a time everybody gets together, whatever. People enjoy it, it's a spectacle, I get it. Okay, world stage, you highlight certain countries, it's sometimes looks good, whatever. But ultimately, it's about celebrating the human and not ignoring the godliness of it. And you know what? That's easy for human beings to do. And Jews are always, for some reason, running to something else. We're always looking in the grass on the other side. They say the grass is greener on the other side of the fence.
But
The grass is also well kept on the other side of the fence as well. Everything looks perfect in the other person's window until you get into that window and you realize that it's not so perfect, and that you have a lot in our own backyard that can do wonders. We Jews are always looking for everywhere else. But when we come back to our own sources and roots and what we have within our religion, we realize that we have it all. Whatever we need is here. We have spirituality, we have culture, and we have music, and we have everything. It's all in Judaism. Whatever a person can enjoy outside of Judaism is inside. Except, but that's what they did in the olden days, when we want to be more progressive. So we want to believe in the human mind, or the human spirit, or the human body, where if it feels good, it's good. That's what the Greeks said, and a lot of Jews those days were very happy with that. We're happy to shed off the Shabbos and the kosher and the burdens and the guilt and whatever it is, and just celebrate it. The culture made sense. We are human beings. We don't see God. If you don't see God, then do what you want. Do what you need. But Judaism doesn't have a future without this. Judaism does not have a future without the God factor. Culturally Jewish is dull, because it might seem good to you, but your children may not enjoy the gefilte fish or the latkes or the Israeli dancing. they may enjoy the Greek dancing, and they go and get involved with Greek and Greece and whatever. So Judaism doesn't have a future without its source, without its base. Yeah, gefilte fish is great, latkes is great. We're not going to give up on any of those. We're going to run strong with all of them. No, not even. We're not compromising on one detail. Herring, I mean, the whole business. On the other hand, that's the outcome. That's not the base. The base of Judaism is a belief, and it's a study, and it's a, more importantly, performance. It's doing. It's action of what counts in Judaism. And the Greek culture couldn't tolerate that. They couldn't tolerate the Jewish people doing things which didn't make sense. And they had the support of a large amount of Jews who were with them, who bought into this. And the Maccabees, now you know why the word Maccabee, it's, I said this before, I mentioned this before, the word Maccabee is an acronym of the words that are found in the Song of the Sea, Mi kamocha ba'elim adoshem. Who is like you among the strong ones, O God? It's all about God. And again, I'll say this again, it's ironic that the Jewish sports leagues call themselves the Maccabees or something, or whatever. It's completely opposite of what that is. The Maccabees stand for God. And they came to bring back the God factor into the culture and into the religion of Judaism. And they were a very small band. There was a very few people. They were called the Zealots. They were the crazy ones. They were the ultra-Orthodox Meshuggahs. And you know what? We all celebrate Hanukkah. We all celebrate them today. Even the secular Jews celebrate. They don't even realize what they're celebrating here. They are celebrating this power of spirit over the power of mind and body. That's the point of Hanukkah. To combat the darkness that other cultures may want to impose upon the Jewish people, which is to forget about God and just do what you want. It doesn't work. Judaism has no future that way. Judaism has to happen as a result of our commitment to what God wants us to do. And a further expansion on this will be in the Sukkah next Sunday. And there is rain in the forecast for next Sunday. I already looked it up. So if that's the case, we will still be outside in the garage. We'll be protected, but we'll be at least next to the sukkah.